Wisdom with Scott Allen.
Hello, I am your host, Scott Allen, and this is Phronesis, Practical Wisdom for Leaders. If the topic is leadership, I'm in. I've spent more than 20 years in the field teaching, learning, writing, and questioning. When I'm not working on Phronesis, I travel, delivering keynotes, working with individuals and teams, and helping people from organizations across industries become better leaders. Want to learn more? Visit me at scottjallen.net. Phronesis offers a smart, fast-paced discussion about all things leadership. We explore relevant topics and incorporate practical tips to help you make a difference in how you lead and live. Listen Notes lists Phronesis in the top 3% of podcasts worldwide. Phronesis is the official podcast of the International Leadership Association. ILA brings together those who teach, study, and develop leadership, advancing leadership knowledge and practice for a better world. Learn more at ila-net.org. Finally, if you enjoy Phronesis, please subscribe to stay current on our weekly episodes. If you find an episode that resonates, please share it with your colleagues and friends. And if you want more content, subscribe to my newsletter, The Leader's Edge. The link is in the show notes. As always, thanks for listening. And now, here's today's show.
Okay, everybody, I have David Day. And for those of you who are longtime listeners, you know who he is. A professor at Claremont McKenna in California in the United States, and just a world-class scholar on leader development. We had the conversation almost already. We should have been recording what we were talking about, but we're going to try and have that conversation again right now. And really, we're going to take the dialogue today, a little bit of a thought experiment, a little bit reality, AI's impact on leadership and management. And I had just shared an article with Dave before we jumped on here that an Amazon employee had been fired by the algorithm and got a message from the system, I guess. It was told, you no longer have a job.
I think it's called Big Brother.
We're in the year 1984. And so I think let's start there, Dave. Just leadership, management, AI. What are some things you're thinking about right now? How are you thinking about this wide open space?
What are the implications for the future of human leadership? Well, we need human leaders. There's 50 years ago, there was this, what's now considered a classic paper in one of our academic journals called The Substitutes for Leadership, Karen Jamir. Oh. And they didn't have the foresight to think about AI as a substitute for leadership. They looked at task kinds of conditions. They looked at certain aspects of subordinates. If you have proactive subordinates who are also very, very smart, do you really need to have leaders for them? And it was an interesting and provocative article. Can AI serve as a substitute for leadership? I think that one is a little bit more provocative than being a substitute for management. I think it can definitely be a substitute for management because management, if you think about it as working within the status quo to do things more efficiently and productively, then I think getting nudges, getting advice, getting reviews from an AI agent who is your manager makes sense. But the notion of being an AI leader is something different. And think about leadership as really being about change, and also thinking about being about adaptability and innovation and maybe improvisation. Those are things that for now, AI is not really so good at. But this whole industry is changing so quickly. Will it be possible and when will it be possible? I think is more the right question than if it ever will be possible.
Okay, so let's stick on management for a moment, because I think, this example of this Amazon employee, I believe it was a delivery driver who just wasn't productive enough and the system fired him. Yes, we have sensor technology, we have AI, we have productivity metrics probably produced very readily in a number of these roles at the end of each day. And it's going to be if we think of management as an old definition was plan, organize, control, and lead. That's what managers did. But if we think about just the plan, organize, control element of all of this, I think these systems really will be fairly well equipped to track my productivity, whether it's my emails, just on any number of different fronts, right?
Absolutely. And think about how that will change the modern organization potentially. Rather than the pyramid, we might have something that looks more like an hourglass, where a lot of the middle management is actually the human middle management is pretty much gone. So what are the implications for career paths? How do you get from an individual contributor to a senior leader? That whole career trajectory is going to change big time, potentially. Again, this is all speculation. And one of my favorite quotes from Peter Drucker is the only thing you know about the future is that it's going to be different. And I think an aspect to that is but we do know it's going to be quicker, a whole hell of a lot quicker than it has been in the past.
Yeah. I was watching a Diary of a CEO podcast, and it's Stephen Bartlett, and he had on Tristan Harris. And Tristan Harris had made the documentary Social Dilemma. And he cited a statistic, and it was based on government numbers, that 13% fewer entry-level jobs were filled last year. So as you think of like accountants, early career lawyers, and I just literally the other day had a friend who owns a marketing agency. He said, we just invested probably what would have been 2 salaries in AI tools. He made the decision to invest in the AI tools versus 2 humans. So I'm starting to hear this more and more. And to your point, what does that mean from just a capability standpoint in organizational life? If we don't have young accountants working their way up, my son's 18, he's about to be 18, he's going to college. What should he study? And these degrees right now, the University of Michigan out of state, Dave, $84,000. $84,000. So now you're telling me that we're going to go ahead and do a $320,000 investment on something that's a little bit shaky. And then, oh, by the way, you want to get an MBA, and that's what, $120 a year at Harvard now? Fascinating.
It is fascinating and quite scary. I'm glad I'm at my career stage as compared to your son's career stage. But what we know from history is that there's always been these massive disruptions. People have always been afraid that the jobs are going to go away, and some do. They tend to be the jobs that should go away.
Yeah.
They're not really meaningful jobs other than helping to pay the bills, which is obviously important. But the work migrates to other kinds of things.
Yeah.
The scary thing is we don't really have a clear vision of what those things will be.
Yeah, let's look at shifting from agrarian to industrial. As all of those plants opened, there was a very clear path to where people were going to go. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. It was there. It was a physical space. There was a manufacturing plant that you could point to and walk into and punch a time clock and go to work.
And you built the Ford and it was black. That was the only color being off.
That's right.
That's what yeah. And so I think that's one thing that feels different. Not only the rate of change, so that feels a little bit different to me, but also just you remember this very well. Even 10 years ago, the surefire bet was to be a computer scientist and you're all set and ready to go. And now all of a sudden with the AI coding itself, how relevant is that degree now? And so I guess cybersecurity, I would feel pretty safe. I don't think that's probably going anywhere. But yeah. Okay, so management, what other tasks from a management standpoint can you envision? Is the AI giving me feedback?
I would assume that AI would give you feedback if it can monitor your performance. The thing that leapt to my mind is, how would AI do a performance review? Yeah. And I think you think about a typical performance review process, you have a manager who sits down with you and goes through various categories or dimensions, criteria of work performance, and outlines their opinion backed with evidence, ideally, around how you've performed in these various dimensions. You get some sort of rating or some sort of score, and you're asked to then sign off on it if you agree with it, and it goes into the file for another year. Could AI do that? Oh, yeah, they could do that.
And I imagine even as you and I were talking a little bit about Bridgewater and some of the stories that were told in Everyone Culture, the book by Keegan and Associates, where they were recording all of their meetings. So I can imagine also that the AI could be providing me feedback. You spoke 60% in that meeting. The words you used were not positive, and slow down a little bit. 70% of your ideas were not taken.
Yeah, absolutely. Ray Dalio has a TED Talk that was, I thought, really interesting about Bridgewater and its culture. It's a little bit dated now. It was from 2017, 2018. But he talked about radical transparency and algorithmic decision-making.
Yep.
And the radical transparency you just identified in terms of everything was recorded. Every meeting that was held on campus in Bridgewater was recorded, either video recorded or audio recorded. And here's the other thing. If your name was mentioned in any of these meetings, you would get an email saying your name came up in this meeting. Here's a link to the recording. You may want to check it out. So
they're saying,
yeah, this is why something like 35% of the people who hire into Bridgewater washed out in 18 months, because a lot of people just can't handle that kind of radical transparency. But the other piece of this he called algorithmic decision-making, which was really in early versions of AI, where he would embed his principles into these algorithms that would sit aside the human decision-making, which he claimed helped improve their decision-making massively. But those algorithms can be used for other purposes as well, as you just noted, in terms of giving people feedback and noting what the performance was like in a particular context or in a particular meeting.
Yeah.
So, yeah, the computing power has just gone through the roof where anything is really possible.
When I imagine, now I'm going to like BJ Fogg and James Clear, the AI manager will say, we need 5%, just 2% more productivity tomorrow, and it'll track. And you'll be driving home and you'll get a little ding and you'll know what the feedback for the day was.
I would say scary, but I think that's probably reality.
Yeah.
And we think the electronic leash is a challenge now. It's going to be something that I think, people will have to learn to live with. Work may well be decentralized, that it can happen anywhere, but it also means that it can happen all the time.
That's an article right there, the electronic leash. It's because I think it's going to be very difficult to evade that. And wow. Okay. So management, we could just dipped our toes in that topic. Now, leadership, why is this going to be more difficult? Why is this side of the kind of conversation going to be more difficult, at least like I think you said in the beginning, for AI?
My thinking about this has changed a lot. I thought that there was no way that people would ever really identify, form a relationship with AI. Now we know people are falling in love with their chatbots. People are becoming dependent on their little mini-me that is an AI agent. Now, putting this into the realm of leadership and power, when we talk about power and invoke, for example, French and Raven's sources of power, there's some that are associated with management, the legitimate power, the power that's involved in your position, reward power, punishment power. But the two sources of power that were really identified by others as being about leadership were expert power and referent power. Now, with expert power, it's hard to compete against AI in terms of the expertise, just the body of knowledge that they have. I'm already turning them into little people that it has. It doesn't necessarily make AI wise, but it makes AI experts. And that expertise won't take 10 years or 10,000 hours of practice either.
Yeah.
The other source of power that I was the most skeptical about was this notion of referent power. the power of liking, the power of identification, that you are able to influence people who are like you and like you. I always thought AI, people were just not going to really form a relationship with something that is inanimate like artificial intelligence. But now we see headlines in every newspaper around the world about what people are doing in the name of love for their chatbot. And relationships with other humans are falling by the wayside in favor of something that is always there to talk with you and always going to agree with you.
Yeah. It reminds me of the film Her. Have you seen that film?
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's been a while, but I remember it.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And that didn't end well, did it?
It didn't. I hadn't had this insight before, but this is really interesting, Dave. You had exposed me to Principles U, back to Dalio, which I think he and Adam Grant, or his organization and Adam Grant, had put together this free, it's a personality assessment, thinking assessment, but it's an interesting one and it's good and it's free. So Principles U, I'll put a link in the show notes. How interesting is this, that if the AI knew my results, is it adjusting? Is it tweaking on the fly? So again, some of this improvisation that you had mentioned, like it's going to be really hard and literally it's changing its tone and its approach and its style to 70 different people in real time based on what it thinks I need as a human being. I'd never even thought of that, but it makes perfect sense that could be accomplished.
It can. And I can point you to some articles, I don't have them at the ready, that are coming mostly from what we used to be called the man-machine interaction literature, people who are into robotics that had been programming AI bots or AI agents in different leadership styles to see which kinds of styles are more effective under certain kinds of conditions. So it's already out there.
Yeah.
Now, the question is, at what point will that AI-based leader be able to adapt styles to different situations or capabilities to different situations, which becomes even more human-like, and not just be based on it's been trained on, but actually can create and improvise in ways that are very human. We all know the Center for Creative Leadership.
Yeah.
What makes for creative leadership? If you think about leadership as a type of performance, it's one that is not regimented, it's not lockstep. It's really one that is adaptive to conditions and very improvisational in nature. And one of the things that's interesting is to look at recording artists, singer-songwriters, people in the arts and entertainment industry, and what they think about AI. And one person who I know who has commented on this and commented on his blog is Nick Cave from Australia, Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. Somebody sent him a post on his Red Hands file, which is a great blog that he hosts, and said that he put into chat, the person sending this comment, I put into ChatGPT, write a song in the style of Nick Cave. And then he gave the lyrics to the song. And what Nick Cave responded is, I can give you my 2 cents. And the 2 cents version of that is, this song sucks. Mm-hmm. And the reason this song sucked is that it was very derivative of what Nick Cave sounded like. And in terms of his songs that he had already recorded. But he made the point that, AI can't feel. AI has no understanding of feelings other than what we tell them feelings are about. Yeah. It hasn't run up against these kinds of insurmountable experiences that people write about and sing about because it has no experience. Yeah. So creativity is one that AI still struggles with. Mm-hmm. And yes, it can create things that are derivatives of something that's already out there, but it is not good at creating new kinds of creative performances that have not been experienced yet.
The conversation has me. I'm going to give you a quick story. My wife was in the hospital last spring for a pretty routine surgery, but we just observed it in a very interesting way because we would ask for something as simple as Benadryl, and the nurse would look at us and say, sure. And then it'd be an hour and a half, or no communication, no follow through, forgot to give us a medication before we actually left, just poor communication, poor follow through. Doctor walked in, said, your numbers are off the charts. I was like, no, they aren't. They're good. And she looked out at her paper and she said, oh, that was someone else. Humans being in a healthcare. When the humanoid robot says, I'm going to get you Benadryl, we can pretty readily ensure that will be placed as an order and that updates will happen because we know that humans want updates. They won't get taken off task. Where could an AI leader be better than the human?
Well, I think in terms of holding an impression of someone based on formal assessments.
Okay.
So we were talking about personality assessments earlier. And if an AI agent has access all of your records, including things like assessments that you've conducted, as well as your personnel files.
Oh, gosh.
Unlike
that. I'd never thought of it. Knows my whole history.
And it remembers. It has, unlike your human leader who confuses things, you with somebody else and mixes it all up. It's got a very clear, accurate memory about you and all the things that you've done in this organization, Scott.
And previous, maybe. Your AI boss, Carl, didn't like this either 7 years ago.
Yeah. And they could upload your high school transcripts, for example. Remember that D you got in physics? I think that's gonna be a career limiter in this organization.
Oh, okay. So I interrupted you a little bit, but keep going.
I think one of the things is back to this notion of expert power. And so AI can't form impressions as we typically think about person impressions.
Yeah.
This is how we remember people. We don't remember behavioral incidents. There's a literature and performance appraisal that says that we're really good, humans are, at forming impressions of other people. We're really bad at updating them and keeping them up to date. And one of the reasons we know that is that there's a lot of false alarms in the data for impression consistent kinds of behaviors that never existed. Back in the day, I was doing some research on frame of reference performance appraisal training. And that's one of the things that my co-authors and I discovered was this notion of it wasn't the behaviors that raters remembered, it was the impressions. And the impressions are faulty in that you will false alarm to things that are impression consistent, even if they've not existed. But AI will not do that.
Yeah. Yeah. What else? Where else could you see it being better?
I think in terms of giving feedback regularly.
It's not going to blow off the performance review. It's just going to have 17 of them going at one time.
Yeah, could be. Yeah. Very efficient in that regard. But one of the things that people are notoriously bad at is giving feedback in real time. Yeah. But AI could be doing that. The challenge is AI tends to lean toward being sycophants and telling you things that you want to hear, as opposed to things that maybe you should be hearing about what you're doing. So this whole notion of constructive criticism, I think potentially could be something that's trained into AI, but right now it leans more towards telling you things about yourself that you want to hear, as opposed to what you should hear.
Yeah, that's a great idea. I like where you're going with this. Thanks.
There you go.
ChatGPT.
Yeah. Yeah.
I must be onto something.
Yeah. So you take it to another human that are like, oh yeah, we did that 10 years ago.
Yeah. Yeah. Forecasting, planning, visioning. What do you see there? What do you think? Human in the loop for the not too distant future?
One of the things about the 20th century organization. It was a lot about strategy and that kind of strategic planning, which I think a lot of organizations are going away from simply because the world is too uncertain and chaotic to do that. But what is replacing it is scenario planning. What are possibilities? And then trying to come up with accurate kinds of estimates of the probability of these different scenarios. So I think AI could be something very helpful, and it probably is being used in scenario planning in organizations because it can pull together possibilities that maybe the human mind hasn't yet thought of, which is an interesting way of thinking about creativity.
Yeah.
Because it has access to so much data, it might be something that is better at identifying what Taleb had called the black swan kind of events that human minds seem to have a blind spot for.
Yeah. Yeah.
We tend to think that the worst of what has happened was the worst thing that happened last, whereas what the worst thing that could happen could maybe not have happened yet, but is right around the corner.
Yeah. And I wonder, it's just an interesting thought experiment. If people are falling in love with their AI, and again, the AI could be designed to match my personality, I don't know. Could it do some of this work better? Could it provide me real-time feedback, but encouragement? Could it be, again, people might experience it in ways that I'm working with organizations now where people don't hear from their supervisor for weeks, or
Right.
they don't have meetings every week, or they don't get feedback, or they don't get any thank you.
Yeah.
That was awesome. Hey, you improved today. Good job. It's almost like gamifying work, gamifying life in a weird way. But you could take the best of gaming design, and we know that humans get addicted to that design.
Yeah.
I don't know.
This will probably rock your world if you haven't heard of it. There's a whole subfield in AI called Lovotics.
No, I haven't.
There's a journal called Lovotics,
Okay.
and it's it started out as being all about this human robot kind of relationships that can evolve. More recently, it's taken a bit more of an erotic turn, given that what's on the horizon is the kind of a version of Her, the movie Her that we were discussing earlier, where your partner, romantic partner, even sexual partner, is something that is non-human.
Yeah.
So there are people who are studying this, and that was always the thing that I thought would be the deal breaker for AI leaders, that they couldn't really, people wouldn't give themselves up and trust willingly with something that was non-human. And the data just shows that is not the case. People do it, or at least some people do it.
Gosh. I was with a client recently, and they were talking about an employee that they had, and the person was being fired and was like super surprised. And I asked the question, I said, have you elevated the rhetoric over time? And no. And again, we can probably program that in to elevate the rhetoric and so there's these ways potentially that, but I had not heard of Lovotics or Lovotic. What's it called again?
Lovotics.
Yeah, the humans giving in. And is there a scenario where you would have a human saying, you know what, I like the AI better. I'm communicated with, I'm told good job, I'm learning, it's teaching me things. That's just a messed up thought experiment to think about. Because if 70% of humans right now, again, these are Gallup numbers, McKinsey has some numbers, but are not engaged at work, I don't know. Let's end there. Fascinating future. For listeners, we'll put some links in the show notes for you based on some of the things we've discussed today. So whether that's the algorithm firing our friend at Amazon, or the movie Her, or a link to, if you're interested, Lovotics, we will put those in the show notes. Okay, what is the practical wisdom? I'm switching the final question up. This is from my friend Joel. What's the practical wisdom for an individual listening to this right now?
Well, we were talking before we went on air about what are the future of careers or the future of jobs. And I think it's impossible to say what that's going to look like with any definitive kind of clarity. But we do know that people are going to have to learn how to use AI and not just to write their course papers or to do PowerPoint presentations, but really to use it as a developmental partner.
Yeah.
And the advantages of that, it's there with you as much as you want it. Will people use it? I think some people will use it because back to this Lovatics issue that people are forming relationships with these AI agents, with these AI bots. And I think it has the potential to massively disrupt a lot of what happens in leader development, starting with coaching.
Yeah.
Why do you need a human coach that you can only meet with a couple times a month, and it's bloody costly and it's a bit of an inconvenience, and where you could have a coach who is a partner that's sitting on your shoulder all the time.
Yep.
And you could ask for feedback. Back to this notion, can it give good constructive feedback that has both the growth opportunities as well as the things that have gone well?
Yeah. And Carl Kunert's working on some of that, which is cool, and just released an episode, I think, with him. Please check that out, everyone. And yes, Tony Robbins, love him or hate him. I'm just talking about the tool right now, has released a coach, basically recorded everything he ever did. And that's an abounded system, an AI agent, and it can be your pocket coach.
Ray Dalio has released a bot of him that is in beta. There's a wait list to get access to it, but it's something that's not only his voice, but it's a hologram of him that you can ask questions about, for example, institutional investing, financial credibility. And you have access to Ray Dalio, you have access to Tony Robbins, you have access to other kinds of experts that you normally wouldn't have access to in real time or real live kinds of sessions.
We need to make the day bot. Let's do it. But what you said is really, I have this image. There's the film Hidden Figures. And of course, that's the film took place at NASA. And you had these, primarily there were women, at least in the film, who were computers. And they sat around and they computed every day. And then, of course, this IBM mainframe showed up. And one of the women wisely knew that she was going to have to skate where the puck was going, so to speak, the Wayne Gretzky quote, and learn that system to stay relevant. Yeah. So I think what you're saying is completely accurate. What are those tools that are going to be used in marketing? What are those tools that are going to be used in HR that fundamentally, if we don't have command over, it's like using a T-square if you're an architect. It's just not going to have any relevance any longer. So I think it's wise advice. Dave, as always, thank you so much for the work you do. I appreciate your willingness to explore today a little bit. For listeners, sorry if we agitated you, but hopefully you do a little exploration of your own. Take care.
Or as I would say, better to provoke someone than to bore them. So let's hope it's more on the provocative side of things than on the boredom side of things.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Okay, take care. Be well.
You have just finished another episode of Practical Wisdom for Leaders with Scott Allen. To contact me, visit scottjallen.net or send me a note at scott@scottjallen.net. I'm also on LinkedIn, so let's connect. If you have feedback, I'd love to hear it. And as always, thank you so much for listening. And now here's my daughter, Emily, with the outro.
You've been listening to Phronesis, Practical Wisdom with Scott Allen.